Well, ultimately, I see the main force of separation is fear. Right? Because, again, at least the way I see it, that the experience of separation is, although it's illusory, it seems to be a natural stage in the development of consciousness. Again, just like adolescence is a natural state of development, or being an infant, you don't look back and go, why was I ever an infant? That was silly. I should have just skipped over that stage. So I even see this sort of ego development, and with it that comes a sense of separation. It all has to do with, how our brain works, and the immense power that thought has. And it all sort of starts to create this sense of self, right? And so I see that sense of separate self as ultimately illusory, but actually quite natural stage of development. But then I think when you get to the threshold, which I think is where a lot of people are now, they've experienced that separateness, and they find that it's inherently unsatisfactory. Not only for oneself, but very unsatisfactory for the world. Right? Very unhealthy for the world. And then you feel that pull, right? There's something else. But that's when you often start to uncover this tremendous fear, because it's a sort of death, right? Moving beyond the separate self, it's a death of an identity. And on the level of thought, it's like it's a death. It's very abstract to talk about it or describe it. But when it starts to happen to you, and you literally feel like you're going to die, or you look in and you see the emptiness of the separate self, and it sounds very spiritual, but when you actually see it, it can really be quite terrifying, quite shocking. Like, my God, the person I thought I was isn't here. And so I think there's this great, for a lot of people that I talk to, this great fear of non-existence. That's part of the irony, is we have to come to true existence through the doorway of non-existence, of our own separate non-existence. And that's very, very, very frightening. And so we distract ourselves. I mean, and the world, the world we've created is a perfect world in which we can distract ourselves with endless amounts of entertainment, trivialities. And when you get down to it, really, usually it's sort of this deep fear of initially realizing I don't even really know who I am. I just really don't know who I am. Most human beings, they really don't know who they are. And then, on top of that, then there's the fear of there's that fear of meeting that existential emptiness or non-existence, because that's the doorway. You have to realize you can't manage it, because that's what the whole world's doing. It's basically trying to manage fear. And I think a lot of people don't know the extent to which fear operates in their life, because there's some people that don't feel like an obvious fear. They don't walk around feeling really fearful. But if you really look at it, why is it that we human beings are looking for those little moments of approval? Why are we looking for love everywhere? Why are we looking for agreement, to be noticed, to be, and when you look really inside of those, there's many psychological reasons, but at the root, it's always fear. Because if I don't get approval, if I don't get acknowledgement, if I don't get this, if I don't get that, I will die. I won't exist. If I don't get all these exterior things, I'll have to face that great void of the infinite inside. I'll have to encounter that. Most people aren't that conscious. They wouldn't think about it in these terms. But fear is actually, as I see it, an incredible driving force for humanity. And we see this on the deep spiritual level and on very exterior levels. I think to find where the love is, or where the hope is in it all, also we have to see that even the things we do to make things better often are motivated by fear too. Like the fear of we're destroying the planet. Yes, we're destroying the planet. That's very true. And if we're addressing that truth from the standpoint of fear, then fear has won the day. Or We don't say like a particular political system. If we're motivated by fear, then we're still operating within the same old state of consciousness. You know, we've just sort of switched allegiances. You know, instead of being a destroyer of the world, now we're a savior of the world. But if we're a savior of the world that's motivated by fear, then we're actually in the same consciousness. It's just heads and tails on a coin, right? Everybody always feels like they're doing the best thing, don't they? You ever notice? No matter what side they're on, they always feel like it's basically the best thing. So, but the interesting thing about fear is when you really go through fear, instead of trying to manage fear, the other face of fear is love. They're not actually different things. There's heads and tails on the same coin. So when we actually can start to meet fear itself, that's when we start to come into love. You know, that's when we come into that, and love always arises from that sense of unity, of what we really, truly, actually are, from the experience of unity, rather than the idea of unity. Because the idea of unity will keep producing fear. The idea, we're all one. It's a nice idea, isn't it? We're all one, we're all spirit, whatever. We're all one, and we're destroying ourselves, and we have to do something about it. And you can feel the fear in it as the idea of oneness. But the experience of oneness, of really feeling it, really realizing it, is the absence of fear. And this is, I think, I find very interesting, is we are also afraid to be without fear. Like, if I wasn't afraid about what would happen in the world if we don't do something, if I wasn't afraid about what might happen to humanity, then I wouldn't have any motivation to do anything. I might just sit in my rocking chair and say, well, it's all spirit and it's all fine. And so there's a fear of not having fear. You see, that's how much as a species we talk about love, but we really don't trust it much. Love's indiscriminate. Love loves what is. Everything. Nothing's left out. It loves the people that are trying to heal the world, and it loves the people that are trying to destroy it. It's an indiscriminate lover of what is. That's love. You see, and I think also as human beings we're often afraid of that. Like, well, if I really love everything and everybody, including the people who are destroying everything, and of course the people who are destroying everything are you and me. We always think it's someone over there. But it's actually our own divided state of consciousness. That's what's destroying everything. But when we really see that love is indiscriminate, doesn't mean it's stupid or that it's an excuse for everything, but it's a lover of what is. And to me, that's the hope. That's the power of it. You know, that's the power of it. It's very easy to be motivated by fear. What I don't want to happen, right? What I want to correct. That's not very powerful, though. We've tried that for centuries and centuries and centuries, right? We come up with a new political system, a new spiritual system, a new philosophy. We could even come up with a new philosophy of oneness. Whatever it is, if it's motivated by fear, it's still in the old consciousness. But when it's motivated by love, then it has power. Then we're not so interested in what I'm against. We're interested in what we're for. That's a very different thing. Mahatma Gandhi always used to tell people, I'm not against the British rule. I'm not against them. I'm for Indian rule. I'm for Indian rights. I'm not against anybody. And intellectually, you know, people can go, oh, well, that's interesting. But really, it's very, very significant. It's literally a change of consciousness. When all of your consciousness goes to what you're for, which is innately positive, and innately it's not being motivated by fear. When we look at what we're against, it's always motivated by fear. So there's this, you know, little man in India that had a great quality of inspiring people, right? And he brought that inspiration was very, very, very powerful. Of course, he always struggled with fear, right, with the populace, because there were always the outbreaks of violence and hate and all of that. And he was always trying to tell people, no, 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 don't hate, don't be against. right? We're for Indian rights, we're for this, we're for that. And I think that's just one example. You know, or Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King wasn't against white people, right? But he was for the rights of African Americans. And that carries with it a very different energy, a very different consciousness. On the surface, it may not look as powerful because we're not going to battle, we're not yelling, we're not screaming, we're not going to wars with people. But underneath, on the unmanifest level, it's infinitely more powerful, exponentially more powerful when our consciousness is what we're for than what we're against. Fear just doesn't win out, period, as far as I'm concerned. Nobody can avoid the truth forever. If the human species doesn't survive, well, I would like it to survive. It's nice. I like it as it's going. But, you know, as far as I've seen in the history of the world, there's almost no species that survives forever. And if we don't do the job, if our consciousness doesn't evolve, life or existence will just go, well, that didn't work too well, you're out. And I don't mean that to sound as casually as I put it, like, you're out, because there will be a lot of blood and suffering and difficulty, you know, in that process. So I don't mean it as casually as I sound it. But underneath, I know that life takes care of itself. There's nothing in me that's afraid that, like, somehow we'll all just go into this terrible abyss and nobody will ever make it out. But having said that, that's not an excuse to then just go unconscious. Like, since that's the way it will be, then I won't do anything. I won't be involved. That's a spiritual kind of cop-out. But when you come from that place, see, then we're not coming from a place of fear again. It keeps arising, you know? And to me, I never find in this that we are, the spirit that we are, words like what we must do or what like it's telling us like somehow we have to do this or we have to do that. It's just, to me, I see it as more, it's in the nature, within the nature of spirit, within the nature of the sacred, to do this, to lean this way. Its nature is to, you know, its nature is to awaken. Its nature is towards love. Its nature is towards unity or harmony. That's in its nature. So that's what it does. It just seems to seem as though we keep getting to these points of crisis. Crises are often the catalysts for change. You know, and I think as humanity as in general, I think we can all start to agree, I hope we're starting to agree, that we're coming to a point of crisis. That we're coming into a contact, not with just our own personal mortality, but our mortality as a species. That we as a species may not survive. And that can provide, just like individual mortality can lead to a change of consciousness, because we realize time's run out. There's no more time. So in that no more time, sometimes consciousness can shift. And as humanity, I think we're rapidly approaching that same kind of imperative. Time is running out. And so quite naturally, there's tremendous pressure on humanity's consciousness right now. We all feel it, right? This tremendous pressure to evolve, to awaken, you know, because somehow intuitively everyone knows if there's not some rather dramatic shift in consciousness, then this opportunity will be missed. Because there is the personal. I would love this transformation for my children and for all other beings, and, you know, for personal. But that's kind of the point I think I was trying to touch on, although not as succinctly as maybe I could have been. That point where that desire or that impulse has to transcend our personal concerns, even the personal concerns for the future of my children. In other words, it has to include maybe that we don't know what's the best thing. Maybe the best thing is that we don't survive as a species. Maybe that's, and it's possible. See, because until everything is possible, we're not even actually inquiring into what's true, because we've put limits. I'll only look at what's true if it happens to exist in this little box, right? But if what's true ends up to be, existence is kind of done with humanity. It hasn't worked. It's going to try something else. Like, no, I'm not going to. So to me, to look at what's really true, it has to open up to this thing that's beyond. It includes, of course, it's going to include your personal concerns, wanting to be happy, wanting your family and your children to have a good life and to survive. That's fine. We're never going to just get rid of that. But I think it has to include a much, much bigger context. What's really real? What's really true? Really? And can I even ask the question in such a way that the question itself goes beyond a human concern? Can I ask it from the point of existence rather than from the standpoint of me, or even the standpoint of humanity? So can I ask it from the biggest possible context? I think that's very, very, very important. Because only then are we actually touching into something that has infinite power. And it seems like that's what's necessary. We have to touch into something that has infinite power, infinite transformative power. And we never come into what has infinite transformative power as long as we stay only within the personal domain. So how do we, how does one do that individually is one question. And, of course, a bigger question is how does that happen collectively? And I tell you the truth, I don't have an answer for that. As a teacher, what I've seen is people come with that kind of motivation that's truly transpersonal, that comes from, I would say, comes from existence. They come to me with it, or they don't. They got it or they don't. I can't develop in them. I can't convince them of it. It's a part of their own maturity. They may not start there, but later they may mature there. But I can't, put it into them. I can talk to them about it, but it's like when you're 10 years old and you say, oh, you look at adults, I'd love to be an adult for a day. What are you going to say to a 10-year-old? Here's how to be an adult for the day. Here's how to, fast forward your consciousness 10 years from now. No, it doesn't work that way. The time will come. Whether it comes quick enough, that's a whole other question. Yes, we are having a difficult time. We've been having a difficult time for a long, 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 long time. Yeah, if we don't realize that sort of, that collective sense of what we really, really are, that we're not separate, We're not even connected. We're more than connected. We're the same. We're the same in expression. We're very unique and we're very different. And there's a beautiful, individualized manifestation of the one. But the whole substance of that, it's all one. It's all the same substance. If we don't realize that, there's no hope. There's no hope. There's no political system that's going to save us. There's no environmental movement that's going to save us. Nothing imposed from the exterior is going to change it. We've been trying that for thousands of years, to impose structure from the outside. Here's the political system, here's this system, here's that system. Of course, some are better than others, right? Some are relatively better than others. But ultimately, as the great Christian monk Thomas Merton, he said, any political system is about as good or bad as the people who make it up. And the system will never, it doesn't transcend the people, it doesn't change the people. So it's our consciousness that is the thing that has to change, our perspective. First of all, most of spirituality is a myth and a dream. It belongs firmly to the dream state. 90% of what we call spirituality, to me, actually serves the dream state rather than serves waking up from the dream state. 10% of spirituality might belong to something beyond the dream state, which means spirituality belongs to life, to existence, to the wholeness of existence. So spirituality and life and everything else, it's the same thing. I don't see spirituality as something that's sort of separate from anything. I think that's part of, at least for me, that was part of awakening. as I literally, one of the first things I said to my teacher was, and I thought, I was kind of ready to get, like crucified for it because I didn't know how she'd respond, but I went, it feels like I just woke up from Zen, from spirituality. And she just smiles at me. And she pointed her finger, and she almost never did, and she said, that's the whole point. That didn't mean like I've thrown away Zen or spirituality or my path or anything. It just meant I woke up from my ideas about it that were based in fantasy, that were separated from this life. I think any spirituality that's separated from this existence is a fantasy. And I don't mean just the existence you can see and touch and feel. I mean existence itself, whether it's manifest or unmanifest. There's a collective consciousness of humanity, and there's a collective mind structure. And it's very easy to just keep functioning in that mind structure while we think that we're not. Until we've come to see that the whole entire mind structure, personal and collective, it hasn't worked. It's not functional. There's no such thing as a better idea in it that's going to have the answer. First we have to see it has to start to collapse for us. And that's a big thing for a person. That's a huge thing. Not only to get out of your own personal conditioning, but get out of the conditioning of humanity as a whole. And this is what I find, this is where one comes up against fear, because when your consciousness starts to get to that place, what you feel like is you're leaving it all behind, right? I'm leaving the consciousness of humanity, but when you get there, what it feels like is I'm leaving the view that everybody agrees upon, that I've known my whole life, that we all function, I'm leaving that behind. And when you actually get there, you realize, and I'm never going to get back to it, ever. I'll never see the world like 99% of the people see it. I'll never get back. So most people get to that point, they see something beyond, but then there's always a reason why they have to cling to it again. It might be, what'll happen to my family? A mother, will I still be able to raise my children? I mean, these are great questions. I've been asked these questions. Ajay, I'm feeling this thing, but I have a 6-year-old. You see, and there's no guarantee that if I really let go, that I'll be a good mom. Will I be a good mom? They ask me. Will I be? Good question, isn't it? And unfortunately, I've seen all the reinsurances I can give them don't really help that much. Ultimately, I just go, how bad do you want to find out? Because I can tell you everything will be fine, but it's not going to help you. Or I can't let go because humanity's going down this rat hole. We're destroying each other. And if I just sort of wake up out of the whole context, will I be a part of the solution? Will I care anymore? Does that make sense? And the sense is, well, the only answer I can go is, do you want to find out? Maybe anything has to be possible. But if someone really lets go, and then they don't get caught in where they let go into, because you can get caught way out there in the middle of nowhere, or you can catch yourself. If you don't stop there, then it's like you come full circle. Like you let go of the world so that you can finally actually be in it. Yeah. But when you get to that point, there's so many good reasons why not to let go. And some of them are personal, and some of them have to do with all of humanity, Because you feel like I'm leaving humanity behind. How dare I? It's the taboo against fully awakening. It's that taboo of a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. And you kind of have that ceiling. Well, am I going to care about the butterfly or the caterpillars anymore? I don't mean it, and it's creating a separation that's not valid, but you get the idea. And it's sort of like, leaving your clan.